All right, today we're going to crack open a single chapter from the ancient book of Proverbs. And I want you to think of this less like some dusty old scroll and more like a super practical guide to ethics, success, and just navigating the crazy complexities of life. It's all packed into just a few really powerful verses. Okay, let's just dive right in with the very first line, because honestly, it sets the stage for everything else. Right out of the gate, it throws down this challenge, pitting two totally different kinds of value against each other. You know, the tangible stuff like wealth versus the intangible power of a good reputation. And that's really the central tension we're going to be exploring here.
So to make sense of all this, we've broken it down into 5 key themes. We'll start with that big idea of a good name. Then we'll get into wealth and justice, the two paths you can take in life, how to craft a legacy, and finally, we'll look at the why, the whole purpose behind this wisdom.
All right, let's tackle that first big idea. And you gotta understand, this isn't just some casual throwaway line. It's actually a pretty profound argument about where we find, true, lasting value in our lives. So that key word here is esteemed. What does that really mean? Well, it's about being held in high regard, right? Having the respect and admiration of the people around you. And what this proverb is saying is that this respect, it isn't just a nice to have. It's framed as a more valuable asset than actual silver or gold. It's like an investment in your social and moral capital.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The text draws this direct line between your inner character and your external rewards. It's a cause and effect relationship, you know? The starting point isn't chasing money. It's about cultivating humility. And the wages you get from that humility, well, ironically, they're the very things most people are chasing anyway. Riches, honor, and a good life.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. How does this idea of personal virtue scale up to a framework for society? You know, how do these principles of value and character actually play out when you start talking about money, power, and what we owe to each other? Well, this next verse is basically the bedrock for the chapter's entire social ethic. Before it even gets into any rules, it establishes this fundamental equality. It says, look, it doesn't matter what your bank account looks like, we all have a shared origin, a shared humanity. And that one simple idea, it just levels the playing field and creates the foundation for everything else it's about to say on justice.
And this is where you see this fascinating tension. I mean, the proverb is incredibly realistic. It doesn't pull any punches. It just states plainly, the rich rule over the poor, and if you're a borrower, you're basically a slave to the lender. Oof, but it doesn't just leave it there. Right next to that harsh reality is the ethical command, be generous. It's a call to act with compassion inside of that very unbalanced system.
And make no mistake, this isn't just a friendly suggestion. It comes with some really stark warnings. The text explicitly forbids exploiting the poor or, crushing them in court. It even presents this wild paradox. If you try to get rich by oppressing people, you'll end up in poverty yourself. And then it adds this layer of divine justice, saying that a higher power is going to step in and personally take up their case. Okay, so shifting gears a bit from social ethics to our own individual behavior, the chapter lays out this really clear contrast between two types of people, basically two fundamental ways to approach life. You've got the path of wisdom and the path of folly. So first up, you have the prudent person. And wisdom, in this context, is all about foresight. The wise person is the one who's scanning the horizon, sees danger coming from a mile away, and takes action to get out of the way. It's that combination of awareness and actually doing something about it. And the contrast here could not be sharper. Then you have the simple. Now, this doesn't mean they're not smart. It's more like naive or just oblivious. This is the person who just keeps on walking straight into the very danger that the prudent person saw and avoided. And, well, they inevitably suffer the consequences. They pay the penalty, as the text says, for that lack of foresight. So just for a second, which one sounds more like you? When you see a potential problem coming up, what's your default reaction? Are you the one who plans and takes cover, or the one who just kind of keeps going and hopes for the best? And this leads to one of the most vivid and, honestly, kind of funny examples of folly in the whole chapter. It's not about a real danger. It's about the ridiculous excuses we make up to avoid doing stuff. The sluggard, or the lazy person, says there's a lion outside, so they can't possibly go to work. It's this brilliant ancient insight into the psychology of procrastination. All right, so we've looked at values and conduct. Now, how does this ancient guide tell us to build something that actually lasts, something meaningful that goes beyond ourselves?
Well, the answer starts with one really crucial action: instruction. And this brings us to what is maybe one of the most famous lines from the entire book. The core idea here is just the profound power of early training. The path you set a child on, the values you instill right from the get-go. The text presents this as having a permanent, lifelong impact. It's all about laying this foundation of character that eventually shows up as action and skill later on.
Okay, and for our final theme, what's so compelling here is that the text doesn't leave us guessing about why it was written. After laying out all this advice, it just comes right out and tells you its own purpose.
The writer basically lays out this clear 3-step curriculum. Step 1 is engagement, just pay attention. Step 2 reveals the ultimate goal, so that your trust might be placed in a divine source. And step 3 is the practical result of that trust. You become a person who's honest, who speaks the truth, someone who's reliable enough to bring back truthful reports.
And this all builds to a final, really powerful image that kind of serves as the capstone for everything we've talked about. It brings us full circle, right back to that idea of building a legacy. The proverb teaches that the culmination of a life lived with integrity and prudence is excellence. True skill, mastering your craft, is a force so powerful that it will eventually put you in the room with the most influential people. Excellence gets you a seat at the highest table.
And so that leaves us with one final, very practical question to take away from all this. If skill, if excellence, is the ultimate outcome of a well-lived life, and it's the thing that brings you before kings, then what's the skill that you are pouring yourself into mastering right now? What's your craft?